4 of these. That's okay with you?
Yeah. Hey, quick question, Angus. Are you able to do that presentation you're going to do about the IDing where ODs are?
We were just talking about that. No, I think I'm going to get called away right about 3:30 here, unfortunately. I'm going to leave this stream up, but I was just talking to Peter about this. The afternoon time isn't working out as good for me.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have a conversation about that. We may want to switch back over to the other one if that's the case. How are we doing on this end, Peter? We look like we get more people coming on or about the same? Or less?
I would say about the same, yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about it later because I want to hurt you either if it's working out for you. But I think we're
maybe we'll make the switch after Eagles, right? Want to do that?
Yeah. I don't like to keep switching things around.
Yeah.
Okay, but
yeah.
Survey there, and we'll see if we can get a better handle on it.
Yeah, good. Perfect. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome. Good for us to take care of our little business here. Get it. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, well, everyone, welcome. It's Tuesday again. It seems like Tuesdays come up very frequently nowadays. It's 3 o'clock on the East Coast. I'm very, very excited about today's guest. The minute I saw Brian speak about this at the NAMSP, I came up to him and I was like, that was probably one of the best talks I've ever heard. As someone who likes CQI, as someone who loves innovation and loves the quality behind innovation, Brian is somewhat of a guru at not just the implementation, but also the CQI. So I asked him to come on today. For many of you who don't know, he's from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He's an EMS medical director, an ED physician. And I wanted him to come on to talk about his Airway CQI process. So without any further ado, Dr. Brian Miller, thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
Thank you, Peter, and I really appreciate both the kind words and the invitation for being on here. So just quick, make sure I can actually advance slides here. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So first off, I'm only one of many of our team. Really, the credit has to go to, our entire Office of Medical Director for the work on this. I just happened to put the slides together and be the mouthpiece for what's really a great team behind all this. And so, as Peter said, I'm one of the Associate System Medical Directors over in the Office of Medical Director for the MAMS, better known as the MedStar system. And then also happen to do some work with Dallas Fire as one of their deputy medical directors as well. And so, we wanted to talk about the video laryngoscopy recordings and really how we adapted that into intubation education and our overall clinic quality management. So I have no conflicts of interest for this talk. I don't make any money from any device manufacturers. And so I will mention the specific name of our device only just for frame of reference of what we're using for our processes. But again, I don't have any specific allegiance to any brand or any money coming in for any of that. So really, when you think about intubation as the process, especially when you think of direct laryngoscopy or non-recording VL devices, it's really a black box. We do some kind of input, and then there's an output. And really, the process in the middle and what the inner workings of that process are really a mystery, short of what we can gain off of a monitor file and things like that. And so, really, we go from a decision to intubate. Some stuff happens, and then at worst, we have just a electronic PCR saying successful or unsuccessful, and we really lose everything in that middle part of the process that goes on. And so this is why part of the reason we wanted to move to video laryngoscopy, especially with recordings, to kind of define this process a little bit further. And so we want to take that question mark out of that and open the box and really figure out how do we do this better and really dig down into the quality management, quality improvement aspect of airway management and intubation. So the goals that I really wanted to kind of put together for this talk were that we wanted to define the procedural and the event review advantages of implementing VL into a system, describe our implementation in our system, and then really discuss how we use this in that quality management program in some areas for how we use these for initial and continuing education as well. So we use a lot of different tools already in our, medical direction and quality improvement aspects, right? We have, our biometrics from our monitor files, whether that be a LifePak, a Zoll, Philips, whatever. We already have those, and many of us look at those for, whether the CPR performance was adequate or not. Was there end tidal on this intubation or not? Some of us are also using audio at times on the monitors. And then, certain systems have used body cams. And then you look into the hospital a little bit, and, trauma teams are using video in the ED to evaluate their performance and opportunities for quality improvement. So really, video laryngoscopy with recordings is an exact thing that we would want to use, similar to all these other devices there. So a little bit about our system. We're about 174,000 calls for service per year. We do both non-emergent and emergent transports for the city of Fort Worth, as well as 14 other outlying cities. And so we also do have first response from our first responder organizations, which are primarily fire departments. And then we do ALS transport with a paramedic and an EMT, and also have some BLS units as well. So on our average, we're doing about 750 intubations a year. So we're fairly high frequency intubation service with a lot of critical patients. And then overall, if you lump in supraglottic airways and BVM, we're doing about 2,000 airway management cases a year, and review each of those already in our continuous quality improvement processes, and reviewing all cardiac arrest and intubation. So again, there was a pretty big impetus for us to add in VL. So then COVID hit, and when there's all these discussions of aerosoling procedures, securing the airway, getting our providers back off of the face, all the PPE stuff. This really just kind of accelerated our process to get on board with VL. And so we ultimately chose the UE scope for multiple reasons. Primarily is that we have a lot of ALS providers in our system. We run 50 ambulances and have a number of ALS FROs. And so we were purchasing a fairly large volume of these devices, upwards of 80 devices. So really economics and durability and all those things really came into play. And ultimately, the UE scope was the one that, when we trialed it, ended up being the best. And so here's our actual RFP and some of the specifications right there. And so really, before we even got into the request for proposal process, we had already previously stated that it had to have video recording, and then we're a big human factors believers. And so we really wanted to take the human factor out of that and have an automatic video recording device. That way, no one had to remember to press a button to get the recording in order. And so, but the floor of our RFP was really just to even have video there. And so we ended up implementing VL right in August, July and August of 2020. So we've had a fair bit of experience. And so we actually implemented this basically in our protocol cycle, and with a cadaver lab where all of our ALS providers were able to get in there and get hands-on with the device. We really broke up the specific intubation techniques that we did, and then subsequently implemented the device and began kind of our quality improvement monitoring. And so one of the other key aspects of this was kind of, when we were rolling this out, is how do we get these files off of the device onto the computer? And so we chose a hard connection, basically to use the USB device directly into a dedicated computer. We only have 2 deployment sites. And so as crews are coming in and out of those sites, it was a natural, logical place for them to be able to hook up and drag and drop the files. And so you can say, essentially all of my files right there, basically where I can get on my computer and look at any of these files from, the previous months or days of intubation. I think as we've learned and spoke with other teams as well, a cloud-based solution for this, where crews can hook into their tablet and basically fill out a form that can designate a run number for some of these things is also fairly beneficial. And so we actually are considering changing our process in that way to a little bit more of a cloud-based solution rather than a hard hookup to the computer every time. Again, our device does require the USB though. And so then as far as our quality management goes, with every implementation we saw, kind of that initial period where we were not very satisfied with our intubation rates, and actually took a dip from our previous direct laryngoscopy numbers. And so at the same time, kind of the NAMSP's position statements on the Airway Compendium were coming out, and, there was all the recommendations that we were doing a lot of already, which was both the subjective and the objective data elements. And so we already had a lot of kind of subjective things about airway success and failure, and then all of our objective metrics, such as, hypoxia and pre-oxygenation and all those things. But we really wanted to kind of start measuring some additional of the, the process measures and as well as the outcome and balancing measures we had done before. And so we used all these findings to kind of just tailor our implementation approach as well as some of our ongoing education, similar to other things. And so this is the list from the Airway Compendium of all the different data you could pull. And so when you really look at video laryngoscopy recording data elements and where that really comes into play that wasn't really covered in the Airway Compendium position statement, was really the intubation technical factors, that unknown that we talked about earlier. And then more of the objective review, the time of attempt. Was there actually a single attempt, or was this multiple attempts captured on video? The actual success by video, and then, other things such as the grade of view. Was there difficulty and complications? Was this a contaminated airway or not? And so we got to get all these unlocked as soon as we got our video on there. And then, I thought this was a really interesting paper. It was actually placed in the Society for Academic Emergency Medicine, and there was Barnacle Bracey, and many of us know Scott Weingart from MCRIT, and they really defined out 3 performance areas during the phases of intubation and the errors that are behind it. As we know, that it's really just a series of incremental micro skills that goes into intubation. And so the use of the video laryngoscopy could let us evaluate each of these different components right there. And so there's really the errors of insertion of the blade and actually getting past the tongue and identifying structures, then actually how you get and kind of manipulate your final view, and then the actual tube delivery. And so this is kind of what our experience was as we watched countless videos. I was essentially almost watching them daily when we first rolled them out. And so this is an example of one of the recordings right here that we obtained, and I'll just kind of walk you through. So you can see this is a cardiac arrest airway. You can see essentially just a ton of contamination down there. The intubator gets a little bit lost on the right side for a second, a little bit of delayed suction coming in to view, just kind of watching all that slosh around. So it sent periods that they may not have prepped suction ahead of time as we would have liked them to. And so they're kind of hanging out here for a second, and eventually we are going to get our view, and then with suction. So here we are. And so the UE scope's a little bit of a hyperangulated device. And so this very, very deep view, you can see there's no epiglottis there or anything like that. And basically they're hunting and pecking with the bougie here. And ultimately this is an unsuccessful airway. And so we were able to kind of guide the crew through that, hey, this was airway that definitely needed suction, perhaps even, continuous suction with a salad technique. Hey, you were a little bit deep on this one, and this is probably your issues for the bougie. Because in reality, all their chart said was difficulty passing the bougie, and ultimately an unsuccessful airway. And through the review of the video, we were able to guide that crew right there. And so that was our feedback to the crew. But really, the biggest key I could say is that our crews are able to immediately review their video after the call on the device, whether at the hospital. And you really see a lot of the time that they're kind of all huddled around, as they're kind of cleaning up the back of the truck after a call, watching the video, kind of critiquing and giving, feedback to each other. And I think that's probably one of the best things there. That way you don't have kind of that negative connotation when, a medical director comes in to provide, some guidance and feedback. This is all kind of peer-driven feedback, if not just self-driven feedback as well, which I think is really invaluable in some of that part. And then, of course, as we're doing case reviews for either, the intubation performance improvement or some other aspect, a lot of the time we can bring up these videos as well, and and discuss these with the crew. And a lot of time we find is that they've already done some debrief already internally, and we can just give them the finer points along the way. But to be able to bring up on a big screen, the video there and share it and go through step-by-step pause and, take this out of the real time and go through has been really a great perspective as well. As you can see here, this is a disgusting airway. And so sometimes the videos are actually a little too detailed. So be aware when you're eating your lunch. And so So really, this is all kind of what fed into our quality improvement cycles. Is we just began to watch all these videos and recognize, that there was system-wide issues, that we couldn't really tackle this on an individual basis. And so this really came into our Plan, Do, Study, Act type cycles. And one of the first components was this. It was, again, that individualized feedback, which was the intubation feedback report. And so you can see here all the key components, and this was given to each crew afterwards. It's actually a pretty big time set for our team. And we're really providing some of the same feedback. And so we moved on to different things. And so this was actually one of our biggest initiatives, was really a video review series, and it was called Tube Talk. And we really went through each of those key aspects of intubation and discussed some of those tips and tricks using real life videos from our crews, the good and the bad and the ugly, and allowing them to learn from, each of those aspects along the way as well. We also do host, trainees at our sites, and so when they come to rotate, many of them have never had experience with RVL device and very limited experience, during their initial training. Some have that exposure to specific devices, but others have not. And so then the other part of this is that many of them also, we need to bridge that experience to skill proficiency gap. The median number of endotracheal encounters, by one study was about 7. But really, I think this is probably an undershoot, but, the 20 to 25 endotracheal intubations for a first pass greater than 90% has been quoted in some of the literature, and some of it going higher. So really having to bridge them from that experience into skills proficiency is a challenge for us. On top of that, where are they training? They're often in the OR for their initial tubes. And so that's that well-prepped, clean airway. And we're putting them out in the wild now, where they've really never seen a true epiglottis in the wild or anything else out there. And the reality is, this is where they're at. They have that patient who's, drank, 2 pints of liquor today and is going to regurgitate that up. They're in that back bedroom trying to intubate after they just ate the, Chinese buffet. And, we're always having challenging body habitus as well. And so this is really the reality of where our medics are out there, trying to intubate, which makes it even more challenging when they're, doing their initial training in the OR. And so really we wanted to give them an avenue where we can coach performance of those errors in real time, having, that field training officer, that mentor out there to assist them along the way to get that muscle memory of that successful intubation, allowing them again to do that self-reflection or that instructor debrief, whether that be on a mannequin or a real individual. And then even more so is giving them video review prior to even going out of some of those tube talk principles that from our video review series, and giving kind of a condensed version of that, of the absolute essentials, and really giving them a feel of what they're actually going to experience once they get out there. And so this is really that field conditions teaching we talked about. We also do use this during continuing education as well. We've used videos and kind of given specific examples and kind of drilled those during some of our cadaver lab trainings and other things. And then I'm really a big believer in this quote right here, which is really that once you reach that acceptable skill level, which we would like to believe most of our medics have achieved that by the time they get, through our credentialing process or continuing that skill refinement. The fact is that really just keep on doing the same thing over and over, and more experience itself does not really lend to anything. It's really the deliberate practice that goes. And so this is from the NAMSP position statement on basically airway management training and education. And really, this is where I believe VL can also come in, is that we have well-defined goals. We have things and steps along the way that we want them to model that behavior, and then we give them that evaluation for that self-evaluation and that opportunity for feedback from others, whether that be peers or others, and then also give them some of those challenging situations as well, where they have to problem solve. So not all of our medics are going to see a heavily contaminated, bloody airway where suction is not enough and they need to move on to something else. Not all of them will see a true foreign body airway obstruction or a burn airway. And so allowing exposure to them through these videos, they can continue that problem solving, that repetition, and kind of building their airway repertoire as they go. And so this really kind of fits in with those principles we talked about. So some of your considerations when you actually think about implementing VL is the device selection. We had to balance, having to get a large number of these devices and deploy them out there. Our system's generally, more novice intubators, so having a large variety of different blades that they could select from. We wanted to kind of condense that down. But each system is going to, have different budgets and different abilities to select them. There's also, the question of whether you upload this to the EPCR versus you do a QI protected database where, you can't go into the EPCR and just immediately pull up this VL file. We actually went with the QI protected database. It was really, for airway confirmation, we're going to go with end-tidal CO2 anyways, so we didn't really need to expose that video to the EPCR and really just use this for our quality management and improvement processes. Uploading processes, depending on your Wi-Fi or all those abilities, file size can do that, and transmission can also do it depending on your device. We had to put some policies and compliance around this. And then, who can access these, who can actually use these, and then whether you're going to retain this indefinitely versus have a rolling cycle of wiping these files, and then also, of course, which metrics are meaningful for you. Really kind of where I see video laryngoscopy going in the future is, I really believe this should be the industry standard for VL devices. That automatic recording capability and really the ease of video transfer should be the gold standard at this point. I think there's so many advantages to this, as we talked about, that I think this is something we really do need to implement, kind of widespread industry-wide. The other part of this is that, we really should be incorporating these into our quality management processes and education moving forward, and getting that to more of a standard process rather than, some of these agencies out there being the outliers still. And the expansion of the evidence is really where we need to go as well. There's very, very limited evidence on, the value of that video review and how it can really improve your processes or not. And then some other cool things are, where do we go with this from a machine learning? Many of us have been exposed to ChatGPT. There's a lot of computers that can now read videos. And so perhaps this is an area where, we can actually have some automation of this as well in the future. So that's kind of my take homes is, let's unmask the unknowns, let's take this from a non-binary or from a binary process, successful, unsuccessful, and kind of open that box a little bit. We can utilize this in our airway management programs and, inform our quality management activities and help out our initial education, really, assist our individuals into a truly productive system learning. So that's all I got. I'm going to put into the chat right now my slide link.
Wow.
And then,
Awesome.
and so,
yeah, Brian, that was incredible. Thanks for doing it in the amount of time. That was tough to do. I appreciate it. I had a few questions right out of the gate, and I'm hoping others do as well. And they can just raise their hand. We'll get them in. Which is my question is the tube talk videos. I think are a fantastic idea. Are those available for others to watch, or is that internal?
We've kept them internal to this point. We've been working with our legal, and this has been a kind of a big thing of, right, we can cut it off essentially as you go in for, past the teeth. There's really no patient identifying features to an airway, especially as you scrub the dates and, some of the context. So we've been working through with our legal for a while now on just kind of what level of de-identification it would take to kind of share externally. And so we've been sharing with kind of select teams, but really haven't put it out on the widespread web yet. I'm greatly appreciative to Maya Dorset. She's at least given me a nudge to try and get some of this onto Prodigy at some point. And so if we can get it out there, I would love to really share this with, for the greater good. A lot of heart and love went into that from our entire team. And, for those out there, I'd really love to share it too. But thanks for the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The other question I have for you is, as far as what is the time commitment that you're spending? Is it the intubation goes down, let's say now, when are you, when is the actual medic reviewing it? When are you reviewing it? And then do you have like a quarterly review of of all airways? Like what is your sequence there?
So our process for a long time, we've always reviewed anything with positive pressure, CPAP, BVM, and above. We've always reviewed those in cardiac arrest. And, we are blessed to have a lot of resources where we have a dedicated staff member who already does those reviews. And so from the medic perspective, they do the intubation, and most of them immediately post-call are reviewing it right there prior to the upload. And so I think that's an area where we would like to really allow that bidirectional where, I just got another call. How can I look at this in the future after I uploaded it? And I think that's an opportunity for improvement.
Are they reviewing the call right on the device?
Yeah, they're doing it actively on the device right there, which it has playback, front, fast forward, backward capability.
Okay. How long did it take from the moment that you started this process until you started seeing a difference? And did you see a first pass success difference, sans hypoxia, et cetera? How long did it take until you saw the value of this QA process?
I think what we saw initially is we had that dip in intubation success initially, and then we tried a lot of that individualized part. And I think what was probably one of the defining things was Tube Talk really addressing things that were unknown to us even prior to deployment of kind of some of those common themes that we really needed to hone in on. And so once we implemented Tube Talk, we definitely saw a rise in success. I think we've had some of the similar challenges that a lot of organizations have had, throughout COVID and, into present day of staffing and turnover, for high volume services. And so it sometimes feels like we're at Groundhog Day as far as some of that intubation. And so this is kind of an ongoing quality improvement. And so I saw at least one hand up there, and I know I see Dr. Pepe does as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Lee, go ahead.
Say, Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Just one question. Can you just make some comments about this program, if you will, and maybe the use of the VL in the context of your utilization of bridge devices and which ones to use?
Help me understand bridge devices. Are you talking supraglottics, or what are you talking?
Yeah, supraglottics.
Yeah, okay. We have allowed intubation and supraglottics in cardiac arrest for better or worse for the time. And then we have a drug-assisted airway management program with ketamine. And then our critical care paramedics have always carried paralytics. And so that's some of the things actually we've been able to identify through our system. Is we've always been, for the most part, for most of our medics, ketamine only, kind of sedation only intubation, for perceived safety initially. And really through our implementation of VL, it's allowed us to recognize that that's probably not as ideal as we could have thought. And what was previously DL, and you could, blame it on a host of different things, really it's allowed us to hone in on all that. And so we've always allowed supraglottics, whether it be first line or second line. And then, certainly we've encouraged a limitation of number of attempts during cardiac arrest.
And so currently you're not using paralytics?
We do not, for the vast majority of our intubations, we do not. I think you would see, if you looked at us a year from now, we're probably going to be moving towards that.
Great questions. Dr. Pepe.
Yeah, so two things. One is I got to get over the other call, but the one question is that since you're working with legal, right, so you won't get an answer for another 4 years. That's one. And then two, one of the things I was really curious about, you went through the RFP and you had a lot of people look at it and they liked this one. Okay, what was it that they liked about this one?
Yeah, and so we trialed 3 different devices. We actually allowed kind of our field training officers, in our first responder organization, ALS providers, to come in and trial the 3 devices head to head. I think we had a channel device. I believe it was AirTrack. We had the Glide scope and then the UE scope, and it ended up kind of drilling down to a lot of our medics' preference of they were having. They were less of a channel fan at the moment. Then they like kind of the simplicity of, whatever it's 4 or 5 different blades rather than, having to choose a standard or a hyperangulated blade. And then, cost was certainly an issue of, the UE scope was found to be fairly economical for us when we were deploying about 80 out there. And so we really had all of them trial in the lab. We had, the medical direction, the operational and budgetary side of it weigh in, and then finally, right from our medics, we had a survey and allowed them to weigh in on what they liked and what they didn't like, and kind of give an overall rating, and all that basically compiled into the more objective process that was needed for the RFP.
Okay, got it. I have to go. But if you come on and do it on the other side, you got to do it in like about a third of the time. Get bullet answers. So thanks a lot. And
Sounds great.
Side. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul.
Awesome. So Brian, again, really appreciate what I would love for you to leave us with is you have a lot of people on this call who either have a VL program that we don't record. We have the ability to record, but we're not doing the QA. Some people here are probably doing DL. If you were the advice giver here, and somebody here wanted to set up a program, and I know that you've said it, but I just want you to kind of recap and say, what are the top 3 things that people should be looking at if they're innovating in the field, and if they're using if they're allowing innovation either not with medication assistance or with it.
Yeah, I think from the implementation side, right, get involved in your procurement processes, whether you're a medical director or one of the leadership positions. Get involved with that and advocate for devices that record, and ideally those that automatically record, and that way you first get your data. Second, if you have devices that aren't getting it, please turn it on, and then start your processes to really review these. And especially if you're a lower frequency intubation system, this is only a few minutes a week or a month to really hone in on these processes and give you an invaluable tool to help your medics and also help inform your systems improvement. And then finally is you can't improve unless you measure. And so, consider, getting that whole picture, as you mentioned earlier, of, first pass success with hypoxia, hypotension, and really, work on processes to monitor those as much as possible.
And you guys use the Ducanto catheter, right?
We do indeed.
Yeah,
we do.
We recently switched out and we got rid of all the Yankauer. So awesome. Well, Brian, again, I love this. I love your talk. Please join us next week. We have Casey Patrick, who's going to be coming on talking about escapades in airway management and EMS. So he'll have a couple of very interesting videos. So please join us every Tuesday. I sent you the link to jump on the Zoom with Dr. Pepe. And again, thank you so much for joining us today, Brian.
Thanks again for the opportunity. Thank you for everyone who attended, and please reach out directly if you need any other help. Always help. Happy to help, friends.
Awesome. All right, you're the best. All right, Angus, thank you.